Hey all, Megasonic ZX here, back with another unscripted death battle review. Today we're going to be talking about a Season 6 episode, Weiss vs. Mitsuru. As you can tell by the title and thumbnail, of course. Unless you're blind, in which case... Hi. This is an episode I don't really see a lot of people talk about, largely just because it kind of fell under the radar since it was sandwiched in between the absolute controversy of Ben 10 vs. Green Lantern and the absolute hype that was Captain Falcon vs. Johnny Cage. So this is an episode I don't see a lot of people talk about anymore. Of course, that's also largely because I'm pretty sure the Death Battle community hates Ruby entirely because of the one Season 2 episode that shall not be named. So let's go ahead, go through it, and give it a fair shot. Starting with the analysis segments, I would say that I quite like them, even if I don't think they're perfect. I think Weiss's is pretty good. Weiss is my favorite Ruby character, so it's just enjoyable to hear them talk about her, and I think this is probably the best of the three Ruby analyses we've got, which is kind of sad because this one still has some of those not quite perfect kinks yet that the later seasons have. I say later seasons like this is a Season 6 episode, for God's sake. But no, I like this analysis. I think it does a good job covering Weiss's backstory into what she does with Myrtnaster, into her dust, into her glyphs and semblance, and out into her feats. I think it all flows quite well. I do have some complaints. Namely, I don't quite like how they don't talk about her story very much, if at all. They talk about it at the beginning with her backstory, and then at the end with her running away from home, but they don't really go into much detail about her time at Beacon, which kind of sucks because I still think that's where the series Ruby was at its best. I think the series went way high scale way too quickly, but that's not relevant to the Death Battle analysis. That's my own personal complaints with Ruby, and I think this one kind of could have benefited from some more story, you know, talking more about her Weiss's developing relationships with the rest of Team Ruby. But it's just, oh no, she put the W in Team Ruby, and then here's all the cool shit she can do. And I think that kind of hurts the flow a little, because you're not so much discussing Weiss's character, when Weiss's character is very important, and she's also the only one who I think is consistently well written, but again, that's aside the point. I also don't find the end of her analysis really weird. I like the use of Ruby music, but it's kind of just, here's a short montage, and then here's a random audio clip overlaid on a footage where she's clearly not saying anything. It's very weird. This is the only time I think Death Battle has ever done that for an ending clip to an analysis. And it's so weird, because Weiss had plenty of good clips you could have used. So this just baffles me. Mitsuru's analysis, on the other hand, I'm very mixed on. I quite like Persona. I like it more than Ruby, actually, which is not a high bar now that I think about it. I like Persona 3 a lot. I think it's a very well-written story with some great characters. And Mitsuru's analysis has that same problem as Weiss's, where it feels like I don't talk about the story of Persona 3 enough. And it hurts, in my opinion, because Persona 3 is a very character-driven story. It's very emotionally driven, and you don't get a sense of any of that. They just talk about, this is the Kirijo group. They experimented on shadows. Oh no, everything went wrong, and Mitsuru got a persona. Here's what personas can do. And I don't think it flows particularly great. I think it flows worse than Weiss's, because they just kind of jump into things. They talk about, here's what her persona can do. Let's immediately jump to her ultimate persona. She's skilled with the rapier. Here's all her persona skills. But they don't name any individually, which is whatever. But I don't like it. I don't like it personally. I would have preferred if they got into details on specific spells and how they work. But that's asking too much, I guess, from this episode. I say that like this is a bad episode. This is a fine episode. I don't like how very little they focus on Persona 3's story. They hardly name drop any specific important characters. They mention Yukari. They mention Yukari, but they call her Yukari, which is not pronounced correctly. They mispronounce Naoto's name as Naoto, and they mention Akechi directly in a feat, but don't bother to say his name. They don't mention any of the rest of C's aside from Yukari by name, and that really bothers me. They do. It's so weird that they take the time to name drop specific Ruby characters' names when it's relevant, but not for Mitsuru, when she's directly scaling to certain characters' attacks or with their support, and it really bothers me. There's this strange bit where they're talking about evokers. They're talking about evokers and how they're used to summon personas. But they include it only in her corner box that Mitsuru can summon her persona without one, which, you know, if you've played Persona, they mention it's shown in Persona 4 Arena that while she's in the Midnight Channel, Mitsuru doesn't need an evoker, which is more a lore thing than anything else. But it's weird that they reduced that to a corner box, because in the fight, jumping ahead a bit, in the fight, Mitsuru is summoning Artemisia primarily without her evoker. So it feels like they should have mentioned it both, but they only mentioned one verbally. I think that's kind of weird. Mitsuru's analysis also ends very annoyingly, where they really brush past the ending of Persona 3 and jump straight into... They hardly mention the Shadow Operatives. It's a throwaway end line, essentially, and then her ending clip is just a wing quote from Cross Tag, when Mitsuru, likewise, had plenty of available clips to use. But yeah, okay, that's the analysis segments. Let's go ahead and get into the fight. I have a very mixed love-hate relationship with this fight. The fight starts... Well, it's already started. This is the first time a Death Battle episode, I think, straight up started in media res, essentially. Which, for those of you who don't know what in media res is, it is when you jump into something while it is already happening. To keep a thematically relevant opener, comparison, the opening to Persona 5 starts in media res, with Joker already in a palace, escaping. You are not meant to know what's going on because you're being dropped hours into the story. That is what in media res is. And it's very stupid here because I have so many questions. Where the fuck is this fight taking place, for one? Are we in Tartarus? How is Weiss in Tartarus, and why is Weiss in Tartarus alone? I can only assume this is taking place in Tartarus, because Mitsuru is in her Persona 3 attire and not her Arena attire. And I know that she's only in her classic Persona 3 look and not her Arena look, because of modeling restrictions. They didn't have time to make a Persona 4 Arena Mitsuru model. So, but that just begs the question, why are they in Tartarus alone, assuming this is supposed to be Tartarus, which is really the only place this makes sense to be? That all aside, I love this opening bit of choreography. The bit of them dueling with their rapiers is excellent, and it's very well choreographed. And I like the voice work from both, as a quick aside. I hardly mentioned voice work on my last one, so I'll mention it here. The voice acting is great on both ends. Weiss is obvious, she's being prized by her official voice actress, and Mitsuru's VA does a superb job emulating Tara Platt's performance. If you didn't tell me it wasn't Tara Platt, I might even think it was Tara Platt. But I love the opening bit of dueling between them. I love the opening exchange, and then my biggest gripe with the fight comes out, and it's fucking Artemisia. Okay, rant time. If you know me, if you are a close friend of mine, you might know I am very fucking picky about how the Versus community interprets personas, because I feel like they never get it right. Artemisia, in this fight, doesn't really feel like a persona. It feels more like a stand from JoJo, and if you know me, you know that is my biggest fucking gripe with Persona animation. Now, this is sort of almost technically accurate to the Persona movies, specifically the Persona 3 movies and the Persona 4 anime, where they very heavily forego the characters using their weapons in favor of them fighting exclusively with their personas. In Persona 4, they hand-wave this off as a joke. In Persona 3, they at least bother to still use their weapons sometimes, but it's primarily them using their personas. And the personas are very free-floating entities that largely float around and fly on their own, and respond to the user's mental commands, like stands. And if you know me, you know that this drives me up the walls. It drives me fucking insane, because that's not how personas work. They stand... Yes, kind of like stands. They do float by you once they are summoned. But they largely do one thing, maybe two, and then leave. Look at gameplay of the actual Persona series. I might bother to put some on screen. If I don't, then go look it up yourself. But in actual gameplay, personas will be summoned by the character, do an attack, like whether it's like an offensive spell or a support thing or whatever, and then leave. Sometimes they will fly into you for a physical attack, but largely they show up, they do a thing, and then they disappear to be resummoned. In the fighting games, they stick around for a couple extra seconds to attack you with combo moves alongside their support, or their user, but it's largely show up, do a thing, leave. And this is even consistent in Strikers. This is how they work in Strikers. Yes, you have those super attacks where they stay around for a lot longer, but they still largely follow this rule. They show up, do a thing, they go. And Artemisia does not abide by this rule in this animation. Artemisia is hanging around for minutes on end without having to be resummoned. And that's not right. That bothers me. Because it's... Like, look at this opening bit here, for example. We have Mitsuru doing her attack. Actually gets knocked back. Artemisia is over on the other end of the room, throwing it to throw attacks at Weiss and then get hit. We cut to Mitsuru wincing in pain, and then Artemisia is directly by her side like she's been resummoned. Like, what is going on here? I'm sorry, that's not how Artemisia works. I don't like the bit where Artemisia is just floating in the air to take down the killer bee, because why is it up there and not with Mitsuru? Ooh, yes, yeah, as you can tell, I feel strongly about this. To be more positive, though, I really like Weiss's little "can't touch me, Ice Queen," because that's so cute. Yang's rubbed off on her. It's cute. I love that. I adore that bit. And I like I said, I really love the sword fighting between Weiss and Mitsuru, because they both have rapiers, so you get it's a kind of sword fight we don't see a lot on Death Battle. So I love the more elegant feel of it. You get Weiss doing her zappy zap time dilation thing, a direct nod to Volume 2. And you get Mitsuru fucking laying Weiss out with a big old kick. Love that bit. And then we get 2v2 between Weiss and Mitsuru and the Aegis and Artemisia, and all of my problems come back, because why is Artemisia just flying around doing her own thing? Again, this is not how Artemisia works. It should be... If anything, and I think what would have been cooler, is if you have Mitsuru juggling casting spells through Artemisia while simultaneously dueling with Weiss. Not only is that feasibly possible for her to do, it will just demonstrate Mitsuru's tactical ability that much better, that she's juggling two opponents. Now, this is well choreographed. This scene is very well choreographed. Don't get me wrong when I say that. It looks amazing visually, but it's inaccurate, and it bothers me. It bothers me a lot. But then, then we get the Aegis going bye-bye, it dies. Weiss is like, fuck this, I still got this, and she charges Mitsuru with a stab right as Mitsuru commits the Elizabeth tactic of Megidolon, and we get the two of them lying on the floor. Mitsuru has been stabbed, Weiss's aura is broken, and Mitsuru just goes, fuck you, yanks out her evoker, summons Artemisia, casts his diorama, and is back at full health. Weiss is fucked, I love this face, and then Weiss dies. Now, after ranting about how personas work for, like, minutes on end, I'm now gonna come out with my second hot take of the episode and say I actually like this kill. It's a fun reference to Mitsuru's... Oh my god, why did I just pause there? No, okay. It's a fun reference to Mitsuru's instant kill from Persona 4 Arena, which is also her astral finishing cross tag. So it works here. It works really well here, because especially because you can do it on Weiss and cross tag. This is a cute reference. Now, I get why some people think it doesn't really look like Weiss is dead. I mean, I disagree with them. You get the death scream, you get the weapon breaking. Conceptually, honestly, I think this is a perfect kill. The only thing I would add is hold on the ice when Mitsuru stabs the ice. Hold on that for a second longer and show the ice staining red with blood. That, I think, will get across way better that she's dead. Then you have it explode, have some blood hit the ground, and the weapon breaks, and boom, you're good. The conclusion is fine. All the stats are internally consistent, but man, I don't want to bring this up very often, like out of episode stats, because I largely judge death battles based on their own internal consistency. I think that makes more sense. But man, I love bringing this episode up when you want to talk about the realistic biggest Stomps death battle has ever done. Because if you want to get outside of this episode's stats for a bit, Ruby is like a town level series at best, with the absolute most generous scaling you can give to Weiss. And Persona is fucking multiversal, and Mitsuru directly scales to some of these feats. Like, it's so funny. Like, they talk about how, oh, Weiss gave up her best bet. This was a really close fight. When Mitsuru fucking steamrolls Weiss in one hit, it's so funny. But yeah, this episode is fine. Despite my grievances with it, I don't hate this episode. I don't want that to be clear. I think there's a lot to enjoy here. especially in the fight. I think the actual rapier fighting between them is the best part of this episode. Because, man, am I so annoyed by how they use personas. And it worries me that if we ever get another Persona episode, especially fucking Jorno versus Joker, which is already a matchup I don't like, that when that episode happens, Joker will largely be fighting with Arsene, and it will just be Arsene fighting like a stand. Which I really don't want. I don't want Joker to fight Jorno at all, but if he has to, I at least want him to fight accurately. But yeah, this is a fine episode. This is like a 6.5 out of 10 on the arbitrary ranking scale. This episode is fine. It does nothing particularly wrong. Honestly, this episode just annoyed. Yep, everything about this episode that annoys me is either I don't like this one uber-specific thing that I know everyone is just going to tell me is a nitpick, or I think about the wait-up period to its release where everyone is doom-posting that Weiss was going to bullshit her way to winning because Rooster Teeth bias on Death Battle. And whenever I think about that, I just think that I don't want Ruby on Death Battle ever again. Oh my god, I have way more negative to say about this episode than I thought. I want to end this on something. Winter Sonata. Winter Sonata is a nice track. It's good music. It's a good music. Also, Persona 3 Reload looks really nice. Just as an offhand mention, Persona 3 Reload looks really nice. That game is... I hope that game is good.